Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thom and Joe Show. We are back for 2022 at last.
I'm finally moved into my apartment, and not everything's right. I'm doing this off my laptop because my desktop decided to go into this loop of Microsoft. Once it wants me to make a pin, and then when I go to write the pin, it says cannot make pin. So go back to login. So I had to essentially wipe my whole damn computer.
Oh.
And so doing this off my laptop in the middle of my bedroom, I have no idea how this is going to sound, but I am right here next to the mic, so hopefully that's good.
And hopefully my audio engineering skills come into play. So, we are talking today about my choice, which I think we made sometime back in October, November, and was, I think, intended to be our 50th episode, because somehow we've managed to make it to 50 episodes without any sort of major scandal or anything. We're talking about Princess Mononoke.
Yep.
We are talking...
I believe this is when we did a poll, and I thought it said Berserk, but
Nope.
Apparently you have the final results, and it said Princess Mononoke.
Yeah,
so.
it's somehow 1997's magnum opus. Somehow we're talking about another thing from 1997. It was going to be something from 1997 anyway.
And this is unintended, but we're talking about another thing that's having an anniversary because it's the 25th anniversary.
In June, yeah.
Yeah.
So, where do we get started with? Let's talk a little bit. So this is a personal one. Let's get this straight out of the way. I want to sort of picture the scene because we're gonna jump around a little bit in time and space in this episode because there's gonna be various things that we talk about. The year is it's the sort of mid 2000s, and basically in the UK we have because the UK is like this. We have basically free-to-air satellite television. Now we've got free-to-air Freeview, which is just basically built into every television. Now I say this because basically as part of their celebration of going from a pay-per-view cable service to a Freeview channel, Film 4 decided to do a series, this is the first time like most Studio Ghibli films would ever be seen on on terrestrial television. And little me, at like 13, went, that looks amazing. What is that? And you got to remember, this is like at a point where it's mid 2003. Anime in the UK, if you did not have Toonami and weren't prepared to stay up until like 1 o'clock in the morning, was Digimon and Pokemon. we're in that sort of dark age before really stuff started to become, available. And basically there is this trailer that Film 4 put on sort of Channel 4, which is obviously one of the big broadcasters in the UK. And it was basically 30 seconds of Studio Ghibli films. And that was my entrance into anime. And sort of I went to my local library and I was with my parents and I went, this is by these people who I've seen this trailer for. Can we get this on DVD? And it was, this is, I stress, completely random. I just picked the first film that's on the shelf with Studio Ghibli on it. And that film was Princess Mononoke.
Well, okay.
That film was like, this is basically the first non-Digimon Pokemon. I mean, I didn't even see the Pokemon anime at, this is, at the point where Pokemon the movie actually came out in theatrical, in the UK, I previously anime was like, I don't know what this is. It looks sort of, because this is the thing, I want to sort of make this, and we will come back and we will talk about, Digimon or Pokemon at some point, because I feel it's inevitable, because it is such a huge part of how anime became popular in the West. But you got to realize that for a lot of people, and I don't know if this is sort of similar on your side of the Atlantic, Joe, Digimon and Pokemon never seem to be quite regarded by a lot of people as anime in the same way, something like Dragon Ball or Sailor Moon was.
Yeah, it was kid stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there was a lot of muddled
Mm.
what is anime, what is not.
Mm.
I am significantly older. This wasn't my first anime. I don't know if my first anime can even be considered anime because it was the Mysterious Cities of Gold
Oh wow.
from 1982, and which was the year I was born. But it was funded by the NHK, animated in Japan, but it was spearheaded by a Frenchman for European television,
Mm.
funded by Luxembourg.
Yeah, it reminds me
So
of what was it? Oh, not that. Well, I think in the early 2000s, Oban Star Raiders. That was like a similarly international co-production. I mean, one of the Avatar seasons, I'm pretty sure, was animated partly by a Japanese team, which I think was Korra, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
yeah,
Yeah.
there were a lot of that in the
Yeah.
80s, like a lot of stuff that just ran on Nickelodeon.
Don't-
And then we had to go back later, and was this
Mm.
anime or was this just somebody else?
Yeah.
And we had to parse everything.
Yeah.
Thankfully, thanks to childhood nostalgia, we have people who just like run at this stuff at full speed and can get all the backstory behind that.
Yeah.
But so the first anime I knew was Sailor Moon. USA Network had it like constantly running, like the Deke. Once again, the same
Dick.
Frenchman who did Mysterious Cities of Gold
Yeah.
brought this over, and the infamous dub that not a lot of purists like, but it's the thing that made it popular. And there was a cancelable. There's that thread of what anime opinions will get you canceled, and one of them was the original Sailor Moon dub, while making it popular, was actually disastrous for the characters.
Cousins is all I'll say. Anyway, so yeah.
But okay, so I'm sorry I babble a lot. So
No,
we'll
no,
lead
it's
back
fine.
to-
It's fine.
We'll,
but-
we'll lead back to my end of Princess Mononoke, at the end of the 90s, there was a lot of Saturday morning anime on Sci-Fi Channel. I watched all of those like 6 to 10 times. And so, it kind of flared out. I needed something else to watch. And then it wasn't until 2000, which, you have the backstory. You have the full story, so I'll let you go on that one. But it wasn't until 2000 until it came out. It was my first year in college. And I worked at Iowa State, they have this thing called Student Union Film, which is a part of the student union where we aired foreign cult and, classic film. And that's what we did. And this was one of my first introductions on campus, is just this group and people I knew. So we went to our first movie was Being John Malkovich, and that's where I got at hey, here are all these organizations on campus, please join one. And that's where I joined up with them. The first movie I worked was Princess Mononoke.
Holy shit.
And it was such a mind-blowingly great film that we worked on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I'm working a Friday. I turn around and I work Saturday just so I can see it again.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's kind of my story on it. We only had a 16 millimeter print, but
Oh,
it was
man.
still a fantastic looking movie.
Yeah.
And it was still, I mean, we're going to get into the wars between Princess Mononoke and
certain.
Spirited Away.
Yeah.
But
oh boy.
yeah, there's definitely a case of Princess Mononoke being the best one, because it is a goddamn film. It is a movie. You need to see it on the biggest screen. It is the most hardcore when it comes to animation. Miyazaki personally himself fixed hundreds of thousands of individual frames.
Yeah.
Cells,
So let's yeah.
So
This is big.
that is my introduction to it. It's not my first one, but it is kind of what kicked me back into it, because it was fading, because the manga entertainment licenses were starting to get stale. And this was when this came out, and then Cowboy Bebop, and then we had Toonami, and whatever.
Yeah, this
whatever
goes.
Adult Swim's anime block was. It
Yeah.
wasn't called Toonami yet.
Yeah. I mean,
So
this comes stateside in, like, 98, 99, at the point where Pokemon the movie is in cinemas, Cowboy
yeah.
Bebop is on television, Card Captor Sakura, the first really big wave after, the sort of the manga entertainment stuff arrives with Princess Mononoke flat in the vanguard of
Yeah.
this. So let's go back to the beginning. For those somehow underneath a rock, this is a film by Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli are basically the gold standard of animated, of sort of Japanese anime in terms of cinematic production. They've done a couple of series, but they tend to be co-productions with other companies. They start in 1986 with the partnership of Takahara Ishihara and Hayao Miyazaki, and obviously the producer Toshiro Suzuki. And basically they're the gold standard. I know people who turn their noses up at anime, and yet they will defend Studio Ghibli to the hill.
Mm-hmm.
We make the comparison. I think Ghibli at their best give Walt Disney at his best a run for his money. I mean, in terms of just how imaginative and how just absolutely spectacularly made these films are. So this is a film directed by Hayao Miyazaki, who, again, if you haven't heard of Hayao Miyazaki, you need to stop listening to this podcast and go and see at least one of his films, like, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is obviously... Yeah, so this is Miyazaki's 10th film. It is basically starts production in 1995, although there are, obviously, there is a picture book which Miyazaki did, as far back as the 80s. There is also the sizable debt this owes to another sort of story manga that Miyazaki did called The Journey of Shuna, and yeah, this is probably arguably, possibly the best film Miyazaki has ever made to date.
It's all to taste. I do not want to go into these wars. I have stepped away from fandom wars of super popular things because it just.
Yeah.
This is why I suggest things that don't even get 100 views. Okay, this is why This is why I watch the Sky Crawlers. This is why we're gonna do we do all this other stuff that doesn't get views.
Yeah.
Joe,
Sky Crawlers.
War.
Sky Crawlers has got over 100 views, mate.
Okay. Yay! Yay! One of my things got over 100 views. But anyway, it is it has gotten to be a war between the Spirited Away and the Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
And I love both films. I like Spirited Away slightly better because it is more to my taste.
Yeah.
I like things that are personal journeys more than they are epics. And if you can mix the two, which Princess Mononoke does at times.
Yeah.
I mean, it absolutely does, which is why it stands out so much. But Spirited Away just does it a little more, and it has a little, scenes that are super observant and just little moments that are totally human, totally amazing that you would not get from any other filmmaker in any other film. And that kind of defines Spirited Away more than Princess Mononoke, which is just a more obviously great film. It looks fantastic. It doesn't have the Ghibli trying to get CG in and they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Scenes, which I see it. I understand it. I know it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But for what I like Spirited Away a little bit better, but I'm not going to take it away from anybody who likes Mononoke better. Obviously, I haven't killed you yet.
No, you haven't killed me yet. I am difficult to kill. So let's sort of go back to sort of, I guess, the lay of this film. So obviously directed by Hayao Miyazaki, produced by Toshihiro Suzuki, who's basically been Miyazaki's producer of choice since basically the 1980s. Um, Soundtrack again by Joe Hisai. We'll get into Joe Hisai's soundtrack for this because I think again this is like one of his. This is he knocks us out the park in almost every single aspect of this film.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is so let's just go very quickly through the dub cast and the subcast. We'll get to the dub cast later because boy, if the production of this film, if sort of the narrative of this film is interesting, the post production of this and the dub is sort of the thing of infamy, shall we say?
Yeah, there needs to be an actual hardcore documentary on how Princess Mononoke came to America.
Yeah, I mean there is a 400-minute making of documentary, but as far as I can see, most of that covers just the Japanese production. This is like before
absolutely.
we get into we'll get to that point. So I guess we sort of have to speak a little bit about the narrative of this film. Certainly it's an outlier in quite a lot of aspects. First off, it is certainly the only period film that Miyazaki has done. Obviously, you know, the rest of his films tend to be set in a sort of an undefined sort of either fantastical Europe or, you know, the modern day. This is a very much a period piece. This sort of leans back into, you know, classic samurai films. As we'll come on to mention. I
don't know if I would agree with that because they don't state a place or a time. I mean, obviously it is super early Industrial Revolution, 1800s Japan, but there is no specific place that it is like. Obviously, it has things, but like, you know.
Yeah. Oh no, it
has samurai, it has lords, it has all of that, but it's like, you know, the fantasy stuff like we get with the isekai all over the place. They have kings and kingdoms.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily make it a period piece.
Yeah.
But this is supposed to be more universal than a specific place in a specific time. I don't know. I wouldn't say fable. It's kind of
it's sort of
it's a fantasy epic is the best I would put it.
I mean, Miyazaki supposedly has gone on record and has commented it sort of takes place during the Muromachi period, but that's like 300 years of Japanese history this could potentially take place in. And it leans certainly into what you have in a lot of Japanese mythology, which is sort of this, you know, you get characters in Japanese mythology, for example, Yoshitsune, etc., who are recorded people in history, but in the same way that sort of something like the Three Kingdoms sort of goes, yeah, these people were real, but hey, they're doing sort of really outlandish, and you know they're working against or with devils, or you know, and it sort of very smartly sort of doesn't really set itself. I mean, the period that would come later, the Sengoku period, where you get all your typical things like the Nobunaga and, you know, Date Masamune, that sort of period obviously abuts it, and there are elements of it, particularly the aquabuses, that seem to sort of lead towards that era, which is something that comes up, for example, in Akira Kurosawa's Ran. So obviously you get, you know, the mechanization of warfare. You know, warfare is no longer about the individual samurai. Warfare is, you know, mechanized and anonymous.
And another thing I wanted to bring up is this is kind of a follow-up to Nausicaä, which is Miyazaki's, like, one of the first movies where Miyazaki became Miyazaki.
Yeah.
It was a smash hit, and it's one of the most influential movies, and you see references to it all across, like, late 80s, early 90s anime.
For sure.
So it has the fantasy setting. It is about man with trying to fight against and trying, you know, beast in the wilderness and the woods, and, you know, about environmental themes. But instead of doing a sequel to Nausicaa, he decided to make Princess Mononoke its own thing, so it didn't have this attachment. So, Miyazaki made the manga Nausicaa, which I eventually have to read.
Yeah, the manga is... let's go on record. I think the Nausicaa manga, particularly the element that the 3/4 of the manga that comes after the events of the film, because essentially to make the film, Miyazaki went, right, okay, I need to basically get funding for this. That's fine. I'll draw a manga of it, and then I'll adapt my own manga. And basically, it not only generates the income to make the film, it also gives me free publicity. Which obviously went in Animage, which at that point was edited by Toshio Suzuki. So, that's where that link comes from. But also, it does, because a lot of the manga was essentially being drawn between the time he sort of finished production on Totoro in 1992 and when he started production of Princess Mononoke in 1995, the manga of Nausicaa sort of starts to influence the sort of the prototypal Princess Mononoke. I mean, I own the art book for, Nausicaa, The Valley of the Winds, a really nice watercolor one. And even at that point, before he starts drawing Nausicaa, he's sort of exploring, this idea of sort of gods and beasts and samurai. So, it's not a new idea, and it's an idea he's clearly had gestating for a while.
But I got to Nausicaa later, just because Mononoke was the big one that broke through here, unless you want to count My Neighbor Totoro being released by Fox, which it was released, people kind of remember it. Roger Ebert was the only one championing it, but it didn't really do much business. It got some advertisement on TV, and, people got to it on kids' video. Nausicaa is... I don't have any other word to use, but a simplistic version of Mononoke.
Yeah.
This is what happened. Mononoke is evolved Nausicaa, where people are having conversations with the people they're fighting against, and there's more ideas, and people are being thrown against each other at a more evolved way and a more fascinating way.
Yeah, certainly.
I find in this one. Nausicaa, there's the oh god, I can't remember names, but the one who would eventually be the equivalent to the person who ran Iron City and Mononoke.
Eboshi, Kushana.
Lady Eboshi, yes.
Yeah, Kushana.
Well, I was trying to figure out two character names at once, and it wasn't working with my brain. So Eboshi, the earlier version, was having this conversation about how only the man she marries can see what the animals did to her, and that is a conversation she's having with three old people. It doesn't get to Nausicaa. It's not against anybody who would have any impact or react to it or, debate it. And in Princess Mononoke, you get the feeling Lady Eboshi and San, they interact with each other. I mean, it's not productive. Hell no, it's not productive. But,
no, okay. but
the characters are more dynamic, and they work off of each other.
Yeah.
At least for most of the first half hour. We'll get to the rest of that later.
Yeah. So, let's sort of start at the beginning. Our protagonist is Ashitaka. Ashitaka is, again, quite an outlier in Ghibli's protagonist. I think the only comparison possibly is the protagonist of, The Wind Rises, who, ironically is voiced in the Japanese dub by Hideki Anno. So Ashitaka is played by Yori Masuda, and again we get the link back to Nausicaa, because Yoji Masuda voices basically Nausicaa's male sidekick Asbel, who in the Nausicaa dub is actually bizarrely enough played by Sheila Booth. There's a random fact. Yeah, the Nausicaa dub is wild, because it's got Patrick Stewart, Shia LaBeouf, and Uma Thurman just in the same film, which is just The most bizarre thing. Anyway, so yeah, in English, she is dubbed by Billy Crudup, who probably for Western audiences is probably most famous for playing Doctor Manhattan in Zack Snyder's Watchmen.
I remember
Yeah.
him in Almost Famous, but wouldn't be surprised if people don't remember it
Yeah.
because that movie absolutely flopped when
Yeah.
it came out, even though the people who
Mm.
saw it loved it. But he
Yeah.
was the band lead in Almost Famous,
Okay.
and
Which I have
you
to
know
confess I've never
the
seen.
guy who has the mystique and all of
Hmm.
that stuff, and it kind of leads to how
Mm.
band bullshit leads into personal bullshit
Yeah.
and kind of that. And it
Yeah.
Almost Famous is a great movie. Watch it, and he is great in it.
Mm.
And there's a lot of people who I wouldn't say are like haven't done anything good, but
No.
they go from people with talent who don't get great films to just being fantastic. Like Jimmy Fallon is great
Yeah.
in Almost Famous, but anyway,
Which
in this movie, um,
yeah.
he's fine.
He's
He's
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
The problem I find with a lot of the Disney and Miramax dubs
Yeah.
is that they try to take whatever talent the main
Yeah.
actors have, and they kind of try to mash them into this
Mm.
hole that
Yeah.
just may not fit. Like,
Yeah.
um, Ashitaka is a basic epic main character. He
Yeah.
is a character who doesn't really have a lot of personal things, and whatever personal things he has gets separated in the beginning of this movie because of how we'll explain. Like, he
Yeah.
has to separate himself, and he is just a person making a journey, and he has a specific special skill, and he has a specific sidekick or character, in which this case is Yakul, his elk,
Yep.
who is awesome. I have thought about naming my car Yakul every time I've gotten a car, but it hasn't really worked out because
Mm.
first of all, I need to learn how to spell it, but
Yeah.
so I need to explain what the car is.
Yeah. And
It's
secondly,
like,
deer and your car are not good friends at the moment. If
no,
I'm
no,
trying to-
no. One of the delays in our episode coming out is that in back and forth moving from Lincoln to Kansas City, a deer rammed at me specifically at full speed, at such a speed that it decapitated itself,
Yeah.
and it rammed right on the driver's side car. So, thankfully, I had an awesome car, and inside nothing happened. The side of my car was fantastically wrecked.
Yeah. I've seen the
But
pictures.
I could still drive it enough to get it to
Yeah.
a new car dealer and get another car.
Yeah.
So, so probably naming it after a deer isn't going to help it
Maybe
much,
not
but
the best idea. So
anyway, so
Ashitaka
I get the feeling
is
this is going to be a long episode.
this is gonna be a long episode. So Ashitaka is from a group called the Amishi. I tried to find out more about the Amishi. I feel like they are kind of essentially a fictionalization of. Oh no, they are actually. They would know the correction. They were a ethnic group similar to obviously the Ainu in Japan. Uh, this is probably their most famous depiction in cinema. Essentially, they were indigenous Japanese population, and again, it sort of leans backwards into the sort of the theme of this end of an era, this sort of sense of the world changing before our very eyes. So I like Ashitaka. He's a great protagonist. He's sort of very much compared to a lot of the other Ghibli I don't think, to be honest, I feel like Miyazaki wrote the right protagonist for the sort of thing. He prototypally sort of seems to have been borrowed particularly from a previous Miyazaki work called The Journey of Shuna, which essentially, again, is pre-Nausicaa. It's sort of, the idea this hero goes on a journey to save his village from starvation, and you can see elements of it sort of appear in, obviously, Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my only thing is it feels like the epic hero who is person who has to go on a journey, and I don't want to say he's always reacting to something, because obviously there are things he personally feels and things he steps up to as a person, and he has some individualized traits, but he's mostly a person who experiences this journey more than he participates in it. And he only participates in it when they will not let him not participate in it.
The Max Rockenstancy effect is the same way that Max Rockenstancy tends to work in Mad Max. Max Rockenstancy is the most boring character in Mad Max, and he sort of experiences things, and he sort of goes through a journey, and Tina Turner is there, and it's sort of the and I like characters like that, because you essentially, they're not blank slates. Never I don't want to sort of say Ashitaka is a boring character, because I adore him, and he's probably one of my favorite character designs, period. And this is before we even get into the sizable debt that I personally believe Breath in the Wild, the most recent Zelda game, I think, owes to Ghibli, but particularly to Princess Mononoke. But yeah, it's sort of he is, through Ashitaka we see the sort of the various changes in the world, and we see the conflict between Irontown and the forest.
And sorry I have to do this, but you brought up Tina Turner back there, and that's the only thing you thought of. I just want you to get beyond Thunderdome here.
Oh my god.
Sorry. Okay, continue on.
Absolutely.
My mind would not let me not do that.
That's brilliant. No, this is why we do a podcast together. So yeah, we basically begin the film. We begin the film though with Nago, who is essentially a boar who we find out later in the film was wounded by Lady Eboshi. He sort of travelled to the east and wreaks havoc along the way. And Ashitaka kills him, but is sort of basically attacked by him and ends up with a demon mark on his right arm. And eventually we're told this will kill him, but not before basically driving him mad. Yay.
Yay.
And it's sort of very much through Ashitaka's curse, we sort of, get this idea of, I guess, sort of the sense of, a curse sort of youth, because obviously you've got to remember this film is coming out, in 1997. We're essentially getting into the middle of the lost generation of Japan, where you basically have a big economic crash at the end of the 80s. And yeah, you basically have an entire generation written off by their elders and betters, because there are basically no job prospects. In the intervening period between the start of Mononoke and the production, you obviously have the Kobe quake. You have the sarin nerve gas attack on Tokyo Tube station. And it's sort of, you can see Miyazaki sort of going, trying to produce something for this youth, this sort of doomed and downcast youth, in a sense. So Ashitaka is essentially exiled from his tribe and sets off to the west to see with eyes unclouded by hate.
Yes. His main thing is he wants to see what kind of hate caused this, and then see what happened. Eventually he wants to try to stop it, but first he wants to see what kind of hate could have caused the boar to transform into this disgusting partial tentacle monster.
Which was, by the way, this is the thing, and this is where CGI really starts to come into Ghibli, because I think this is really the film where Ghibli started using digital in their work process. Sort of got this idea of, and it is absolutely seamless. While yes, a lot of it is still hand drawn, some of the sequences, particularly when you got high speed movement in it, are just absolutely flawless.
Yeah. It looks really good in comparison to Spirited Away, which has very obvious CG that is kind of an eyesore, especially the garden sequence or the flower sequence when they go through that thing of flour, and it's very
Yeah.
obvious a curtain of CG. And and Miyazaki himself did a lot of work. I should correct myself. He corrected 80,000
Yeah.
anime cells.
Of about
and
200.
This was
Yeah.
the last film made on plastics with filmed plastic cells, animation cells. This was the last major animation.
Yeah.
And then they went digital after that. So obviously they had to dive more into digital than I think they would have liked.
Yeah, which is reflected in its absolutely colossal budget. I mean, this is I think up until I want to say one of the Evangelion films. This was the highest budgeted anime film ever made.
Yeah, approximately 2.35 billion Japanese yen, which is 23.5 million, depending on exchange rates. But that was the most expensive, but thankfully it then became the highest grossing Japanese film or film in the Japanese box office of all time.
Yep.
For a couple months.
For a couple of months until a little film called Titanic came
in. And then Miyazaki went out of retirement, and then, well, okay then, I'll make Spirited Away. And then it became the highest Japanese film of all time.
Yeah.
For a while, and then...
For a while, and then Demon Slayer won it.
Well, first Your Name, then Demon Slayer.
Yeah. But then again, it was a pandemic, and there was nothing else to watch. But yeah, so we basically... and this is where two elements sort of start really coming into their own. First is Joe Hice's score, because there's some brilliantly... epically sweeping music in the sort of Ashitaka's travels to the west. You get these, and the cinematography, like the way that this journey is shot, sort of just has this sort of epic scale to it. The way that sort of we. There are some shots in this that are like I would happily frame and put on my wall. Let's put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, during just that journey sequence alone. So. We then sort of basically, the film sort of rears a little bit of its head in terms of its anti-war, because it very much is an anti-war film. I don't think we can sort of indicate that it's not, because basically the first major fight scene after that is extremely violent and surprisingly bloody for a Miyazaki film.
Mm-hmm. It is absolutely brutal, and it's the main character doing part of it, but it's only he comes upon this village that's being attacked by the lord of the area, who we never get to meet or anything, which is one of my problems with the film, especially when it gets into the second hour, is we have this entire antagonistic wing that does not have a direct representative. We have the monk who would come in later, played by Billy Bob Thornton, but he is not necessarily that branch. He is just a person taking advantage of the desires of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, the samurais are attacking this village, and Ashitaka comes upon it, and then some of the soldiers see him, and they're like, well, we got to attack this guy now, because he's probably going to do something. He's like, stop, I don't want to fight you, but they keep going. And then he breaks out his epic character ability, which is he is one hell of an archer, and he has a specific weapon that uses arrows with stone heads. And they do a brutal amount of damage for a PG-13 film.
Yeah.
Like, they straight take off a guy's arms and pin it to the...
nearby tree. Yeah. And then
he just straight beheads somebody else.
Yeah, there's like...
And generally after he does that a couple times, people leave him alone.
Yeah. This has certainly the most violence of any Miyazaki film. Which isn't a high bomb up, but it is very much sort of like Miyazaki is just complete gloves off with this. He's just right, we're going to do a violent film for a violent period, essentially. It's like, and it doesn't really censor, it doesn't really hold bar, although the times I have seen this on television, it is butchered. It is completely cut down, and it's sort of like, there's no blood, because it's very much compared to the rest of Studio Ghibli's filmography. It's sort of nearly pushing a 12A in terms of the violence and certain other aspects of this, and sort of trying to have this on like a Saturday afternoon in sort of school holidays. It's sort of like, are you absolutely sure about this?
Mm-hmm.
Which is fair enough, but I do like how this film has an absolute, it's unswerving to what it's trying to depict. It doesn't feather, as certain other films might do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so here is where we get to meeting all the characters and how they work off each other. First, we meet the monk played by Billy Bob Thornton,
Jigo.
who is he is basically a person who has lived in this world of war for ever. It's just completely jaded, and what he is going to get out of it is what he can take from it.
Yes.
And
so,
these people aren't going to change. These people are just, we are at the control of people higher than us, greedier than us, and the best we can do is just take what we can. And that is his view of things. And Jigo is his name.
Jigo is his name. He's played in Japanese by Karu Kobayashi, who I can't really see as being in very much anyone would have seen. He is also apparently Martin Sheen's dub actor in The West Wing.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So essentially Ashitaka saves him, and then they have a discussion, and then it's like, well, and then he kind of points Ashitaka towards Iron City, or Irontown.
Yeah. Yep.
Irontown, yes.
Yeah.
And Lady Eboshi, who is played in English by Minnie Driver.
Yep.
And easily the best acted character in the English dub.
Yeah, played by, in Japanese, Yuko Tanaka, who this is the thing with a lot of the Ghibli dubs. Like, a lot of the Ghibli dubs don't really use traditional voice actors. They use traditional actors because obviously, Ghibli is sort of a higher level, and I genuinely think she might be the best in both versions of the film, both the dub and the sub. But she essentially represents a sort of the militarized idea of warfare. She's a very nuanced character. This is the thing, she is looking to destroy the forest and build Irontown out and out into the hills. But also she looks after lepers, and she takes in, obviously former prostitutes. So, and there's this nuance to her as a character. Miyazaki's films are absolutely full of, strong, principled, intelligent women. But I don't really think it's since Nausicaä, since Kushana, that we've had that sort of character in an adversarial role. Certainly for a while.
Who is more complicated, and certainly more complicated than Nausicaä, where it's just like she got almost completely consumed by one of these beasts, so wants to destroy them.
Yeah.
But and for Lady Eboshi, it is more of a case of she is wandering the world like Jigo is wandering the world. This horrible world that especially treats women terribly, and is trying to make a place for it. In her case, she is trying to make a place where the women who have been wronged are safe, and the people who have, like the lepers and other people with misfortune, are protected and have a place in this world. I mean, the only thing is she has to sometimes take it and sometimes be smarter and have better force than other people, especially this iron deposit. So this is how she has to defend her life. This is how she has to defend her people. And she makes no apologies for it. And she does not give a shit if it is destroying the forest or whatever. This is how she and her people have to survive, and they completely support her. And it is more complicated than just being, I am the person who is going to make all the weapons and wahaha and
I mean, this is the thing. this is the thing with Miyazaki. Miyazaki very rarely has out and out villain. I think the only out and out villain I can immediately think of is the villains in Cast in the Sky, where you have Colonel Mushka,
Yeah.
who's played by Mark Hamill.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the only reason I only like that movie is just because the villain is just so one-dimensional. Everything is like weapons, weapons, weapons. All like everything has to be a weapon. I have to make this a weapon. This is going to be a weapon. This is all weapons, and that is his character. And I'm just like, and unfortunately, I watched the later ones first before I went to the past ones, so
Yeah.
it hasn't evolved. And obviously there's an evolution here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Cast in the
obviously
Sky.
there's more.
Cast in the Sky is very Saturday morning card. I mean, it feels like the sort of thing that if, abridged out to like 6 episodes would be a decent Saturday morning cartoon, because it is very much it very much is this sort of boys' own adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Which sort of brings us to sort of so we basically then have, as Ashitaka is traveling to Irontown, we have an attack on the sort of the iron train, the rice. So basically, they're obviously they're trading the iron for rice to obviously feed the town and carry on. And these convoys are getting attacked by the wolves and San.
Mm-hmm.
So
San, who is I don't want to say is the titular Princess Mononoke. Her name isn't Mononoke.
No.
That is just a term for rage and stuff like that. But her name is San.
Yeah.
And she was raised by wolves, and she believes herself to be a wolf even if she is human. And she is trying to protect the forest, and if that means killing these bastards because they just take what they want and destroy everything, then that's what she's gonna do.
Yeah, and that's and basically this attack on the sort of rice train is very well shot. It has that sort of brutal sort of suspense to it, and then the wolves attack, and then it's like, oh, and then we get Moro. Moro is I like Moro, but I feel Moro is, because I think we've had this conversation, the dub on Moro is very Marmite.
It is very strange, and I remember the first time I saw it, there were some people, like, the conversations between the animals, their lips do not move like their conversations. No. It is like translating growls into, human speech, and that's kind of how they're doing that, and how they do it with like layers of voices, and it is very flat, and it there's not a lot of emotion coming off of it, except for Keith David. But
we'll get to him.
It got laughs the first time I watched it, and I get it, because it's kind of silly if they, especially in the second hour when all of the animals are having extended conversations for each other, and it's just, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't feel right, and it's supposed to be, animals having a conversation. It's not supposed to be human speech. We're just getting it translated and how it feels. So,
although
if it doesn't feel right, the human either like runs away from it or laughs at it. So that's. But
although there is that weird bit
when you. Especially when you have Gillian Anderson as Moro.
Yeah.
And who is a good actress. She is fine. She has a very dry personality, and when it put in through all these filters and it's already kind of flat as is, it kind of makes it feel like she's not acting when she totally is.
Yeah. I, for my part, really like how Moro is done by Gillian Anderson, but that's possibly because I feel it sort of, I don't know, she seems detached from the conflict, and I don't know whether that's something the dub sort of overplays, or because obviously in the Japanese it's great, and I think the Japanese dub of this is certainly stronger, but I think there are there are good performances in the English dub. I mean, even by Ghibli standards.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not perfect. It
No.
absolutely is not perfect.
No.
I don't think Claire Danes as San quite
Mm.
gets the edge on the character.
Yeah.
Obviously she was in My So-Called Life, so she gets being a I don't want to say disenchanted, but a
Disaffected.
separated teen from, what is going on in her life and reacting to it. But there is that feral attitude to her that does not come across in Claire Danes' performance that she doesn't quite get.
And that is definitely where the original Japanese voice tracks have their advantage. Because Yuriko Ishida is just absolutely killing this role.
Oh,
It's just absolutely, you get that sort of sense of the battle inside San as a character between the girl and the wolf. But anyway, we are getting off. We're getting slightly off track. Essentially,
there's a lot to get to.
There is a lot to this film. Like this is a long film. We need to say this before. This is like over 2 hours at a point where anime films were an hour and a half, like at most. Anyway.
Yeah, and the pacing is very epic, so it is very spaced. So it feels like its length.
So, post the attack of the wolves on the supply train, Ashitaka and San finally meet, and I fucking love this moment. It's just there are moments I like in cinema. There are character introductions I like in cinema, and for my money, San's introduction is probably one of the best bits of character. The way that the character is introduced to us, the viewer, for San is very smartly done. It's sort of, by the end of that sequence, which I think is only about a minute long, you have an idea of who San is, her attitude towards humans, the fact that obviously her relationship with the other characters in terms of her clan, and then she's gone, and it's sort of it's sort of one of those moments that's very fleeting and sort of very, very well done, and it's sort of this perfect cinematic economy, because then Ashitaka immediately comes across two men who've been wounded from obviously the supply chain and takes them through the forest to Irontown.
I should say, what exactly happens.
Sorry.
He's laying down, and then he sees her walking with her wolf mother and her brothers, sisters, what have you, and she just looks at him, and he's trying to talk to her, and she just says, "Go away," and then just walks on. It doesn't present itself like when you're talking about it, but when you see it, it's just like it is very clearly somebody or something from another world who is just actively rejecting you. But they're like, I sent you that review on that where it's just like, if I came in contact with a person who was a girl who was raised by wolves, I would do a bunch of stupid shit to impress her too, and that's that kind of comes off here, but seriously.
Oh no, absolutely, and this is without sort of mentioning that one, she spits out her mother's blood and sort of wipes. She's just sort of like she's bloodied. She's sort of absolutely slightly battle worn, and secondly, this is what the film basically chooses as its poster. This is the iconic image of the film, and it's sort of like, and dear listener, that is where I accidentally fell in love with San from Princess Mononoke.
Oh, I get it.
We had this conversation before we recorded, and I blame her for many things.
I was old enough that I'd already had my taste, and she fits within it. So that's I can't say that's where I fell in love. Joe, I was
14.
I just happen to like women who have short hair and women who are athletic. So that crosses that ticks some boxes for me.
Joe, I was 14. It was a very, very...
Yeah, I know. Okay, I got it. I got it. Like my anime thing that did that was Leona in Dominion Tank Police.
Okay.
And strangely enough, I watched parts 3 and 4, which were the bad parts, the parts that are not the satire on police, but it was actually, you're supposed to take this seriously, and it's supposed to be amazing and thought-provoking and all of that. And, it wasn't until I was older that I learned, okay, it wasn't that. But I still have a particular attachment. And
Yeah.
Obviously she is, Leona is, as a type is, where I fell in for that. But, anyway, we are getting off track again.
Yeah. Oh dear. Anyway, so San, ladies and gentlemen, San.
And then the next time we meet her, it's after Ashitaka is going through with Lady Eboshi and taking a tour of the village. We are meeting with these people. They are the most human people. Yeah. We have Toki, who is this former brothel employee, now factory worker, who is the most no-nonsense, fantastic. It's just like, I'm not taking your crap, but God, you're gorgeous. Because Ashitaka is a very pretty boy, and that these women have eyes, and it's taking through these former, brothel workers who are now factory workers, and these lepers who make the weapons, and they have a place in this world, and Lady Eboshi, and you understand and you completely sympathize with these people. And then the character who Miyazaki would mostly side with in most of his films comes in and tries to murder all of them.
Yeah.
San just dives into with her wolf, brothers and sisters, and, jumps in and just goes for the throat of everybody she can get her hands on, or her knife on, for that matter. And that is our environmental character the movie is named after. If it was Nausicaä, she would just be the good character, but she's not specifically the good character. And that, in this case, I mean, she's doing what she believes is right, absolutely. And, from what the shit she sees, she is right. Because it is destroying the forest and it is going away. And our protections, and it is essentially what Irontown is doing, is causing the ruin, because it is causing these endless cycles, and we'll get to the cycles. But that side that Miyazaki would absolutely side with in his younger years is presented in an antagonistic fashion, is one of the interesting parts, because everybody has a dynamic. It is not presented like, oh, it's an excuse for their behavior. Everybody essentially pays for what they do in this series, or at least the bad things they have done in this movie, I should say. But they also have this reason why they are doing it that makes sense.
Yeah, and I feel that. I feel like complicated is the wrong word. I feel like Princess Mononoke is a lot more emotionally messy. It's sort of, whereas, Miyazaki of, the mid 80s to sort of the late 80s to even sort of, Porco Rosso, the previous film he made prior to this, his protagonists are always in the, generally in the right. There's a few moments in his films where, his protagonists sort of make a wrong move, but they're sort of, and Eboshi is messy. She's sort of at once she is, protecting people who essentially look down on society, particularly the lepers, and at the same time she is using them to basically get her own gains in power. She is basically at once she is exploiting the forest for it, and secondly she's using the iron that the forest presents to protect, the bottom of society. And that Miyazaki and Minnie Driver and that sort of, the film balances her so excellently that we never really feel like the film is condemning her, but never do we feel the film is, entirely on her side. And eventually the film obviously starts to go off that pivot towards, no, what she is doing is genuinely suicidal and frank and will doom us all, which only really comes in the last half an hour of the film. and
Yeah.
and then he does it again with San, who is it's
But
intensely
the opposite.
Yeah, in the
They
opposite.
start where she's this villain who is
Yeah,
trying to
messy.
murder all of these people, and then Ashitaka, in his, like, let's face it, he has a crush on her. He doesn't
Yeah.
know it because he is an epic character, but for the first time he sees her,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah,
Oh.
he has that look of, yep, I'm in love with this person.
Yeah. And like that's the thing. It's like but Miyazaki never tells us this until it's like outright. Oh my god, I'm in love with her, which but at the same time, San is this sort of very self-loathing character. She hates humans, and yet she is human. She sort of tries to kill Eboshi, and then there's this sort of death complex going on in her to a certain extent. She's like, she would kill Eboshi if it killed, if she could kill Eboshi, it would kill her, and it's sort of, and I don't, to have one very well written, messy female character in a film, great. To have two, great. To have them sharing multiple scenes and where these sort of these fulcrums of power and these sort of sensibility go back and forth, and your protagonist is part of this, is nothing short of absolute genius screenwriting.
Yeah. I would certainly agree. I mean, and it keeps that up for a certain time. We'll get into the second hour when we get to it, but I feel the second hour is weaker than this just because it has to get into the machinations of the plot and, the epic battles and situations and circumstances. And it also gets a whole lot more goopy.
What do we define by goopy, Joe? I've never heard this pronunciation before. Goopy, what
goopy,
do we mean?
Like slimy.
Oh,
Just
yes, gloop, also gloop.
Gloop.
So, yeah, basically, Ashitaka comes to her defense, manages to sort of one-hit KO two characters, which is like, obviously, by this point, the demon arm is giving him, like, basically incredible strength and, basically makes him an absolute combat demon.
Yeah.
And then he gets shot.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
by accident, they're one of the factory women who are the people who they're trying to make them handle the guns is part of it, but is aiming the gun at him and can't shoot him.
Yeah.
But then it just accidentally goes off anyway and
Yeah.
shoots him like right in the chest.
Yeah. Oof. And again, it's the film.
But he now has this accelerated strength that fires up by the demon arm, by the hatred that is going on here that he's witnessing, and it fires up and it makes him powerful, and he essentially makes the decision outside of it to rescue San no matter what. So he knocks her out, or I can't remember if she gets knocked out or if he
knocks her out because he does that basically shoulder charge to the stomach.
Yeah, because he tries to calm her down and it does not work.
Yeah.
She just slashes at him completely, at his throat. She intends to kill him.
Yeah.
And so essentially he stuns her and gets her out. And he also has, I can't remember if it's this scene or the next one where he has to stun Lady Eboshi too.
No, it's the same scene because he basically he does it like one after another. It's like at this point
one after another because Lady Eboshi and San are essentially fighting each other.
Yeah.
And then he gets in front of them and stop,
and it's
then knocks them both out and then tries to take San out of there. But so yeah, this is and this is sort of where the movie gets into its more epic trappings and what it's really about.
Cycles of violence.
Cycles of violence. It's all not anybody's fault. It is just cycles of violence that are constantly acted and reenacted on everybody, and it is you get to see the process of it right in the middle of this little fight right here that just keeps building and continuing until the climax.
Yeah. and that's the thing, the film absolutely holds no bars in going. Ashitaka's sort of curse is a manifestation of, anger and violence, and it tends to flare up in violent situations, and it sort of, and then he does this sort of, where he goes, this is what, the conflict between the forest and the obviously Irontown has led to.
Mm-hmm.
Your actions have consequences.
Yeah. And the consequences keep, building and building until they are completely unmanageable by any human hand, unless to
push it along.
Sacrifice, essentially.
Yeah. Not helping this is the fact that Jigo is a great character. I think we need to say sort of a little bit about, when we say monks, we're sort of more talking sort of warrior monks, because at this point of period, there were just armies of sort of monks for hire, and obviously this would come back in the Sengoku period, where Oda Nobunaga basically just sets his targets upon them and basically wipes them out. These are significantly powerful sort of third party, and sort of Jigo is. I hesitate to say Jigo and the film's true villain, because he's certainly not a villain. He's just a guy, trying to make his way in the world, trying to sort of, keep a little bit of power for himself.
He's trying to figure out how to take advantage of every situation.
Yeah.
Which he likes and respects the people he's around, but if you're gonna get in his way, he's gonna stop you.
Yeah.
He I don't want to say he's maybe he's the most human of it. He's just trying to get his fair share out of this, because he's seen what everybody else is, and he sees no way out of this.
Yeah.
This is just going to be a constant cycle, and basically the only thing you can do is get the right people on your side and get what you can out of it and run.
Yeah, and this goes all the way up to the Emperor, because it's sort of like, this is something I feel isn't really talked about a lot in terms of Princess Mononoke. It's the basically in this age, there's nobody who has the sort of the hand upon the tiller of power. It's sort of like everything is chaos. Everything is, this is a period that would eventually just descend into civil war, which would basically rip Japan apart for 40 years. The cycles of violence have no end, and basically nobody is. All you can do is cling on and just hope that the cycles of power and violence and sort of revenge sort of pull you in the right direction, and that's sort of how Jigo as a character works, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
thankfully, you have more of the history stuff on this.
Yeah.
I tried to read through the errors, and it gets immensely complicated around here.
Joe,
around this time.
Can you tell this film may have accidentally kickstarted my interest in Japanese history? Full stop.
Maybe
I
just
blame this film for so much.
But also, you're approaching it with all the information and historical stuff, and I'm approaching this from a movie. It's interesting that the Emperor does not have a role. He is not. He is acting in his own interest.
Yeah.
So it is the main conflict. It is what causes the main conflict is that the Emperor wants the head of the spirit of the forest, because it's said to bring immortality, and this is just for his. He never rules anything. He doesn't have a hand over anything. It is just something he is doing in his self-interest. It just happens to be he is so powerful that it causes a reaction to everything else around it.
Yeah.
And and that's interesting if you look at it. Looking at it from a movie standpoint, it kind of causes the second half to falter, because we have all of these representatives of the various point of views working off each other and working against each other, and sometimes they help each other, sometimes they don't, and that is the dynamic that works the first hour of the film, and that is what makes it the best part, and it makes it I think the first hour is really great. Probably the
Yeah.
best thing Miyazaki's ever done.
Yeah.
But then you get to the second hour, and then all of this is acting off of this character who isn't here, and just these soldiers who are only acting on the orders of
Yeah.
this lord who isn't here, I
The
believe.
Asano, yeah. Who's...
Yeah, Asano is not
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
He is not a presence. It is just the rulers are non-presences that just have power, so the people have to do it. And you could say that's a commentary. I don't.
I certainly think
I don't know if that's a commentary or not, but it's certainly an interesting way of doing it, where the people who have the most influence over why people are doing this are off screen.
Yeah, and I argue that works in the film's favour. I genuinely think it's sort of like, there is a sense of the cycles our characters find themselves in are, none of our characters making. Even if we go up to sort of, the most powerful characters we see on screen, which are obviously the gods. The gods are trapped in basically a death spiral because they know essentially their way of the world is sort of ending. The little by little the environment is being destroyed. And we even see this in the sort of the color palette. The film sort of starts out with obviously this very verdant color palette, and the closer we get to Irontown, the more murky, the more brown, the more sort of sludgy looking is. And obviously we go back to the forest and we sort of return to this verdancy. But by the time we get to the sort of the central conflict, it's back to this sort of browns and reds, and the idea that basically, even if the forest is doomed in a way, because essentially just mankind will just continue to expand and expand, which is sort of I guess the great antithesis of Nausicaä, where Nausicaä is very much a world in which humans are just about clinging on.
Mm-hmm. And here it feels like the people are becoming the gods. And this is what the rulers, people as gods, do, is they work in their small-minded self-interest for short-term games, like, making the iron and destroying everything to protect their town for as long as possible, which, that is understandable. But the emperor just decapitating the spirit of the forest on this offhanded belief that will give him immortality is like the ultimate small-mindedness of a person as a god. And that is a thing I think it's intended, and I think that it is kind of goes into this mix where as the people become powerful, this is their ultimate downfall, and this is what is ultimately causing a lot of the issues.
Yeah, I would agree. I certainly feel this film is, Nausicaä is a meditation upon nature. I mean, the film was sponsored by the WWF in terms of, its environmental sort of kudos, but at the same time...
And I should note, as an older person, that's the World Wildlife Federation and not the World Wrestling Federation.
Yes, absolutely. But no, and it's sort of, but I feel Mononoke is the more stridently environmental film. It's sort of like, Nausicaa is, well, look what you've done, whereas Mononoke is, look what we're doing. And it sort of very much is this film that sort of meditates on industrialization, the short-term gains of power and firearms and, gold and eventually, yes, absolutely, even up to the sort of the structures of power, set against this sort of, this very ancient, this very traditional sense, which obviously is represented by the forests and the forest spirit. This idea that as the humans become gods, so the gods become mortal and killable and fallible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, back
to following the plot of the movie.
Back to following the plot of the movie. Ashitaka's dying, guys.
Yeah. as bullet wounds in the chest tend to do.
Yeah.
He gets taken to the forest,
Yep.
and in this extremely lush lake in the middle of the forest, and then there's the middle part where the forest spirit visits him.
Yep.
And this forest spirit is this deer-looking creature with the face of a human.
Yep.
Or it just has a human face. I mean, it's not exactly like that.
No.
It's still, there's, just something enough off about the face that it's not human, but it's just trying to make that where it spawns a tree, and then the tree dies, and then his wound is healed.
Yeah. But not the curse, because that would be too easy in the plot. They also I'm almost sorry.
Also, I want to know, was this an influence for the deer spirit in Harry Potter? Probably was. And I'm 95% sure Brian Fuller has seen Princess Mononoke and then used that to make the Wendigo in Hannibal, except extremely more twisted, obviously.
Yeah. And Nintendo have Game Freak have definitely seen this film, because they stole one of this. They stole the design for the Forest Spirit for the Legendary for Pokemon X.
You would know more about that. I'm not a Pokemon person.
I haven't played that one, but it is like literally just change the colours and pretend we didn't know what it looked like. So we sort of basically, and then we see sort of Ashitaka and San sort of get in there, sort of meet cute, and it is fucking adorable.
Yeah.
This is where
it's not exactly meet cute. It's just like, you are a human. I don't have to like you, and if you step out of line one thing, I'm going to kill you. And then she breaks out her knife, puts it like 2 inches from his neck, and he just says, "You're beautiful." And then obviously she has never heard that before, and she just blushes the shit out of that. And and then their awkward relationship continues.
Yes, and then she feeds him sort of chewed up jerky or something, I think it's.
Yeah, it's like some sort of dried meat. And she is chewing. He can't eat it because he is still weak after, getting shot and dragging her out. And like, once your adrenaline / demon spirit wears out, you crash.
Yeah. And certainly this is where...
can't even, he is too tired to eat, so she has to, like, chew it up like a bird and eat it, which is, some people, like, see that as kind of sensual. It's like they're kissing, but it feels like, on her end, it definitely feels like she is just fulfilling a duty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't... You can get that vibe out of it if you'd like, but... She is absolutely doing that out of duty, and I imagine he is seeing that emotionally on the very differently.
Yeah, oh, definitely, and it does. And I feel this is where the dub works best. Like, Claire Danes is not really as sort of superb as San the Warrior, but as sort of San the sort of more human side of her, she definitely gets very well. And it's sort of very much... The thing is, I would just go back to San's character generally. San is sort of really quite, zealous. Actually, it's like, I'll kill all the humans, etc. But I wonder, through Moro, if we see, Moro is going, oh, the humans are really evil and the humans are going to destroy us. It's like, and you are using your daughter as a weapon. You're sending your daughter to go and kill people.
Yes.
You're basically, the humans are evil, but your daughter, who you keep telling her is not human, you're basically using the human aspects of her to get your revenge.
Yeah. But, I mean, she has a, Moro eventually has a kind of realization near the end that I actually do like you as a human and as my daughter, and I don't know how much wrong with it.
No,
Just yeah, but there is also if we don't do this, the humans are going to wreck everything, and sure enough, they wreck everything.
Yeah.
So there is that side that she cannot. Moro absolutely cannot forgive, even in death, as we'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah. But and certainly this is, I don't think Miyazaki has done a film that sort of, the relationship really develops much beyond we like each other, and it sort of, whereas this, it's sort of very. I hesitate to say, there's a couple energy to San and Ashitaka, but there is sort of, that back and forth, we have to make compromises for each other sort of sense to them. So certainly towards the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and the battle is sort of, by this time, obviously, Jigo's plans are fully underway. He's sort of slowly, obviously, tracking down Akoto, who is voiced by Keith David, who also does the narration at the beginning of this film. And essentially, by the start of the third act, we sort of have, the battle lines are drawn, everything's going to, everything is, war is inevitable. Ashitaka is gonna have to just make his own way in the world because Moro just goes, right, you're healed enough, go away now.
And it should be noted there's a lot more context we're missing. Like Lady Eboshi, one of her big accomplishments is killing the Lord of the Monkeys.
Yeah.
And she is the one who shot
Naga,
Naga, the leader of the Boars, the more reasonable one, and then the reasonable one going mad is kind of what triggered off the board, because we have Akoto, who is, kind of reasonable until he is, enraged as well, but he is still a leader enough, but the leadership is faltered, and that everybody has gone to hatred.
Yeah,
and eventually Akoto himself. Yeah. As we'll see.
Full-on center cannot hold energy, sort of like everything is going to shit, and sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. The fulcrum of power is now fully towards the humans, and we get some really quite visceral battle scenes in this. It's like this film, it does not, as we've said before, does not pull its punches with how it depicts warfare. War is hell, guys.
It is brutal. People do not die well in it.
No.
And all it does is just this giant waste of life.
Yeah, and
for the most part. And it's just, it is, it is just bizarre, surreal, and genuinely awful.
Yeah, there is there is a dream-like sensibility. We see one of the main battle in sort of flashback, and it's sort of like, it's, the sound is down. We see basically from, the battle's perspective, we get this sort of beautiful shot of San right at the end of it. That sort of, this is, riding into supposed seemingly certain death, and it's sort of like, and then we see the aftermath, and it is just Miyazaki and Ghibli generally, obviously through Takahara's Grave of the Fireflies, is certainly not a director and certainly not a studio that glamorizes warfare, but perhaps, with the possible exception of Howl's Moving Castle, which is obviously made in the aftermath of the invasion of Iraq, does not show the aftermath of war quite as viscerally and quite as unflinchingly as he does here.
And one of these scenes that stayed with me, like I said, I don't like the second hour as much as the first hour, because it's to personal taste. I like people working off each other more than I like giant battles, and it's just big stuff happening, because I wouldn't say it feels separated, because absolutely it does not. But it just, there's a certain lack of control, and there's a certain lack of what these people are doing is mattering in this moment, because what this moment is bigger than everybody. But what the scene that stayed with me the most is when they're mercenaries that are hired to try to lead Akoto as he's losing his mind to the forest. So what they decide to do is they take the bodies of boars, they cover themselves in boar blood, and they hide in the hollowed out bodies of boars to make it think like the spirit of his soldiers are coming back and leading them to victory when they're actually just leading him to the forest spirit so they can kill it. And they are, when they show up, they have, their eyes are soulless because obviously the eyes aren't there, and they just move in such a ghostly fashion, and it is just bizarre.
Oh god, yeah, the animation on that in
strange.
particular it's
It is genuinely spooky and genuinely disturbing in ways other parts of the movies don't quite get, because obviously there's violence and obviously it's all a mess and a wreck, but this is like this kind of this is the part where it unnerved me, and it had nothing to do with the violence. It had just this action and the way they move and just the surrealistic part of it.
Yeah, deliberately unsettling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and it's also this sort of part of the I agree that it sort of definitely leans upon this sort of idea of, you know, the events being bigger than everybody else, but it feels like without that first half of the film to make you identify and make you sort of, you know, you have, you know, the various characters you are, you know, you understand and you're interested in how this struggle is going to affect them. I don't think that second half would work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously I would like the second part of the film to be, or the first part of the film to be all of the movie, but I mean that is more to my taste. Like I said, Spirited Away is a personal journey for Sen, or, you know, Chihiro.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use the name that was forced on her. Sorry, but it is more of a journey, and the payoff is all of these people going through this journey together and just the results of it. And it is so much more satisfying to me from an emotional standpoint, but obviously this is more of a mess. These are not problems that will be solved by somebody winning this war or somebody stopping this.
Yeah.
It is, you know, the effect of this is a lot messier than, you know, just a personal journey and finding things, and, you know, this does not have
a happy ending,
a definitive happy ending where everything is resolved.
No.
And we have the answers to how we are going to live our lives.
No. And it's in this sort of last half an hour where I feel the film just absolutely goes to another level. So, by this sort of point in the film, basically everything converges back in on itself, and the forest spirit is slain. And it's sort of like a moment where the film almost has this intake of breath, because, you know, by this point, you know, San has been consumed into sort of Lord Akoto, who has become full-on raging demon. Moro has essentially sacrificed herself to rescue her, and we basically get our you know, if you love this girl Ashitaka, you'll save her sort of moment. Where it's like Moro going, my daughter belongs to your world now, not mine.
And then after Moro gets her head cut off, the head still bites off Lady Eboshi's arm.
Which
I don't know, it's kind of a statement on just these cycles and just how just this hatred that exists here cannot go away at this level between these people, or this generation, I should say. That this is kind of unsolvable, and it's up to you now. It's kind of like the end of the Omega Man, where Charlton Heston is dead, but he has the cure to the virus, but he is in this fountain, and his generation has bloodied the fountain, and it is up to the youth to save what they have done wrong.
Absolutely, and I would say definitely, because really we have a film wherein by once we leave Ashitaka's village, there are no young characters in this world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have Irontown where there are no children because obviously it's just, you know, recently been founded, and, you know, obviously, you know, there are no families, there are, you know, just, you know, couples, but, and it's sort of a very stark film for, you know, Miyazaki's films who have always sort of lingered in childhood or been, you know, younger characters, to have this world where, you know, our protagonists are basically the representatives of this new of the next generation, a generation who we hope can sort of, you know, change the patterns of endless, you know, endless struggle and endless suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot. I personally do not like the last half hour of it, but again, it's a matter of taste. It's similar to the end of Paranoia Agent.
Yeah.
Paranoia Agent, this whole time is all of it has been a metaphor for people not taking personal responsibility, and all of these people it's somebody else. It's this golden bat kid who is causing this, and this is all a metaphor for people not taking personal responsibility for their lives or their actions. And eventually, to make this point, it all becomes so thick that it becomes I wouldn't say personified, but it exists in our world. This metaphor for this poison of personal responsibility has become such a poison that it just becomes this black blob that spills over everybody and all the characters. And completely wrecks Tokyo. And it is these... I get the feeling like I said, it gets goopy. Like, after the spirit of the forest is killed, this monster with this...
no head.
Looking for its head just starts destroying everything and becomes not the action. It's people reacting and not acting, except for Ashitaka, who decides to give back the head as one last action to try to save things. And that's kind of the only active thing people are doing besides Jigo, who is actively running away and trying to keep it away so he can get his money and his reward. And, you know, so, but it just becomes this giant goop that is acting on everything, and it's less interesting to me, who sees stuff through structure. Like, I have been a trained writer. Like, I see everything through structure and how this is built and how this works. And to me, this is the least interesting part of the movie, because you just have this giant thing of goop. And yes, it's big, and yes, it's
goopy.
It affects everything, but it's not dramatically interesting to me.
I mean,
it's like why I do not like Godzilla movies or giant kaiju things, because because whatever you can do is not going to stop them. Whatever actions you take are not going to generally stop these things. It eventually either is done what it's doing, or the creature fights the other creature and they have a big long drag out. And it is not interesting to me, especially like the things that Hideaki Anno is interested in, like that he rips off from Godzilla movies to put in Evangelion, where all of the men try to destroy these angels with billions upon billions of dollars of equipment, and it fails. And he loves those part of the movies. You can tell he loves them because they take up a huge part of Evangelion. But these parts do not. Thankfully, Evangelion has far more interesting stuff that can be explored, but these parts do not intrigue me as much, because there is only one thing you can do, or there is nothing you can do. So you either do that or you don't do that, and it's not as interesting. Like I said, I still think Princess Mononoke is a great movie. Of the people who do not think, who like Princess, or not Princess Mononoke, but
Spirited
Spirited
Away,
Away
yeah.
better, I am not going to, crap on the other, it feels like there's the dynamic, the people who love Princess Mononoke absolutely hate Spirited Away, and the people who love Spirited Away would give Princess Mononoke a B. That is the general feel. I mean, obviously between person or person, but that's how that has come out. And I am not a person who is going to give it a B. It is absolutely an A or an A minus at the very bottom.
Yeah.
But it's what you like.
Yeah.
And
I,
so
I,
that is how
yeah.
I reacted to this.
Yeah, I would frame the ending, the sort of that struggle a little bit differently, and I would say I feel this is the only ending the film could have, because once those sort of structures of power, once that sort of sense of there can only be one solution to this all-out war, which is just complete annihilation, sort of it's this sort of very nihilistic sensibility towards, and this is where I'm going to talk about Ran briefly. So Ran is a film by Akira Kurosawa, obviously, who I found out recently, basically when we were planning this episode, met Miyazaki, and there's like a full 2-hour sort of televised thing with him and obviously with Miyazaki and Kurosawa sort of sitting down and discussing the film during the production of Princess Mononoke. Uh, and essentially, Ran ends with this moment of complete nihilism. Ran ends with one of our major characters who is a blinded youth. Now, Ran obviously, Ran essentially adapts King Lear, and this obviously represents the character of Gloucester, who is essentially blinded by Lear and essentially left to and you can basically the main character, this character called Sumaru, is sort of left on this castle in the wreckage of, this period where this after this sort of fire, this final battle where essentially every major character has either died or has already died. And it is this moment of complete nihilism. He has a scroll of Buddha Kamon, and the scroll blows away, and the film ends with a man atop the wreckage of civilization, with no god, no vision, and just utterly lost and bereft. And Princess Mononoke, I feel, it is an answer to that. I feel that Princess Mononoke is an answer to the nihilism of Ran, insofar that basically Ashitaka and San aren't alone. They've got each other. Mm-hmm. The wreckage of civilization will eventually grass over. It will become something new.
An interesting note to that. At the time Akira Kurosawa made Ran, he was essentially blind.
Yeah.
So you could take the character from that as Kurosawa representing himself.
Definitely. That reading has been made multiple.
Yeah, absolutely. But on this end, on how Miyazaki does it, this is out of his hands. This is not something he can do. This is something this younger generation has to do. Because we've essentially there are no more gods that are going to save you. There's no magic thing. What we have is each other and what we are going to do with this.
Yeah.
We are now in charge of our own fate, and that we have to be the ones that have to fix this, because there is essentially nobody else who's going to fix it. If we wreck it, we are done. Yeah. There is no force of spirit that is going to fix your bullet. There is no there are no gods anymore that are going to chase away whoever is affecting this.
Yeah.
It is up to us. We got to do this. And it's especially the younger people, because the older people are still in this mess and are still in this cycle and cannot get out. And to an extent, some of the younger people are, because as much as you want the ending to be where Sun and Ashitaka realize they love each other and together, they cannot. She still hates the humans, and she has to live in her world. And Ashitaka is going to rebuild Irontown because that is his world, and maybe they will meet, and maybe they will find something that works. Yeah. And that is the hope, but that is not the guarantee.
Precisely. And then the film comes west. And boy, we need to talk about this. So,
yeah, there are a lot of things we need to talk about.
Oh boy, where do we start? Let's start with perhaps okay. I should preface this by saying this is a story Miyazaki himself has recounted. We do not know for sure the exact details of this. This is sort of what I believe, from what I've read of Miyazaki interviews, etc., is basically what happened. So, the film is a huge success in Japan. I think with this film goes on to win the best picture in obviously the Japanese Oscars. It makes, as we said, it is the highest grossing film for about 2 months until the megalith that is Titanic turns up. It does so many awards. Like this is absolutely ridiculous amount of awards. It basically wins every major animation award going. I mean, we need to sort of obviously put this in perspective. This is nearly 4 years before best animated picture becomes an award in 2001. And obviously we had this conversation prior to recording this review, and we basically went, well, it's going to be either this or Prince of Egypt that would have won it had the Oscars existed at this point. For that particular...
Well, the Oscar for Best Animated Feature.
Yeah, had for Best Animated Feature, and boy, isn't that considering this is a field that also contains Bugs Life, ants, and Mulan.
One of the many pieces of trivia is this was actually one of the movies put for Best Foreign Film when the year it eventually came out, and it was the only animated movie to do that from Japan until Weathering with You, of all things, in 2019, which I am a Shinkai fan. I will not say that is one of Shinkai's best movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is an absolutely beautiful film, and I like it, and I like revisiting it to see what I missed, but that is not the same level as Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, I mean we are talking a major installment in 1990s anime. Now, here's the very interesting fact. Within 1 week of this film coming out, it has a really big competitor in the form of Hideki Anno's End of Evangelion. To the point that sort of obviously there's a very good documentary about the early years of Studio Ghibli where Miyazaki sort of basically looks at both of the posters of his film and obviously his former protege and goes, well, this is the division between my generation and his generation of going, his film has got dead people, the sort of decaying remains of the main cast of Evangelion. Mine just says hope on it, or live on it, and it's like, and this is a big film in Japan. This is very popular.
Well, the people let to get to how that point is, Hayao.
Yep.
Let's talk about your relationship with your son.
Oh boy.
And maybe we can get to the point where we get there.
Oh boy.
We're not actually going to do that, but
we're not going to do that.
Obviously, Hayao Miyazaki did not have the best relationship with his son, and still kind of doesn't, even though they are trying to make amends.
Yeah.
And it hasn't reflected in Goro Miyazaki's work, but it certainly the anxieties of the era were reflected on Hideki Anno.
Yeah, certainly. The film did come in for a little bit of criticism in Japan because it is quite violent, and fair enough. And then the film comes west, and Miramax, which is obviously a subsidiary at that point of Disney, at this point under the control of, Michael Eisner, who is fully into, I have no idea what's going on anymore, and basically everything is on fire mode. And here we enter Harvey Weinstein.
Yes. It is unfortunate that the two biggest shepherds, possibly, of Japanese anime kind of having a boom in the West are John Lasseter and Harvey Weinstein.
W.
All of which who have quite a few documented harassment issues, some worse than others.
So we come now to, and there was a draft of this episode where I started with sort of these 3 little vignettes of Miyazaki starting the film, me finding out about Princess Mononoke, and the katana incident. So, Joe.
Yes. I can give you some background. Harvey Weinstein is, at this point, has made the formula for Oscar bait and how to attract the more higher-minded people, or the people who want to be higher-minded. And he hits on a lot of foreign films that he transfers over here, and a lot of, like, quote-unquote independent. I mean, they're like $10 million budgets, but they are smaller stuff that he knows how to make appeal to the Academy audience. So he has had a lot of success over the years bringing foreign stuff over here and chopping it to pieces and making it appeal to modern audiences. I think equivalent to this would be David the Gnome, which was one of the first series I ever watched. And I only found out later that it was run through Miramax and the Weinsteins. So that's how he is used to working. That series was cut up. It certainly has its separate things of how it handles things, and it is definitely foreign, because it is more violent, and I don't want to say it treats you more like an adult, but it certainly, when you compare how American animation treats children and how foreign audiences treat children, there is a distinct difference. Like, to the point of, I don't know, oh goodness, Tintin.
Yes.
Would you consider that Tintin children, or is that for all ages?
I would say all ages, certainly. But it's sort of like, it does get read by children. It is, a staple of childhoods. I mean, even in the UK.
But they packaged Tintin for children in the U.S. and it's like the New Adventures of Tintin, and they ran it on Nickelodeon. And the one episode I remember watching, there was this plague, and normally it would be a sickness, and somebody would be in a hospital bed and be like, "Oh, they're sick," and they'd be closed off until everything's better. These people have a plague that is ripping them apart from the inside out, and you hear it. And there's just like this moaning, and there's all of this, and it was so horrible. My mother came in, and it's just like, "What are you watching? Why is it like this? This is supposed to be, a cartoon. And my mom is a science teacher and a biologist, so she knows exactly what illnesses does. She just doesn't think maybe this isn't the part to bring a realistic illness into. So it is distinctly different from what we have. So so that is where Harvey Weinstein kind of comes from, but he still edits the crap out of it and makes it palatable for English audiences. And that's what he thinks he can do with Princess Mononoke when he gets to the rights to it.
And it's here we need to make a brief interlude about Warriors of the Wind, aka the last time somebody tried to do this to Hayao Miyazaki. So Warriors of the Wind is basically a hatchet job edit on Nausicaä, and it is... I have seen it. It is as bad as you can imagine. Please don't bother ever going to actually... Please just watch this thing on YouTube. Please don't give anybody ever involved with this money back to Princess Mononoke. So Hayao is very much like... no, we're not cutting this down.
Yeah, he has a similar manner to the people who made video games based on Nausicaa. Like Nausicaa was the breaking point where it was a major hit, and now he has control. And instead of just licensing it to people who will do whatever they please, like people who made, like somebody made a Nausicaa game and made it essentially about killing all the creatures because they are the enemy, and he was like, no, nope, no more games. No more of these foreign people cutting up this movie to make it something I absolutely did not intend.
Yeah.
That guy is not the hero. She is the hero. Stop this shit.
Yeah.
He is done. And he is Miyazaki. He has all the power now. So he can.
And so, basically, yeah, the Weinstein goes, we're going to cut this down. Toshio Suzuki, no, this is the thing. Nobody has ever quite... This is the thing, okay. There is a katana involved. So basically the Apocrypha goes that at a meeting in New York, a producer from Studio Ghibli, which could be either Toshio Suzuki or the other producer for Princess Mononoke, which is a gentleman called Toyoyoshi Tokuma, who is probably most famous for producing other Studio Ghibli films, opens a box and basically presents Harvey Weinstein with a katana. Either written, attached to, labeled, or whatever, on this katana in English is 2 words. No cuts. And Weinstein does not take this well. I mean, it's one of my life's sort of ambitions to find out what happened to this katana, because it's like, it is, if you were writing a book about anime in the West, this is a key moment. This is the moment at Japan goes, no, you're not editing this down. You're not giving this sort of gag dubs or, Manga Entertainment's extremely sweary dubs. This is coming out
Harvey Weinstein probably has rarely come against a person who has this amount of power.
Yeah. And yeah, it basically, Weinstein astonishingly backs down. And it's sort of, I think it's just, there's obviously, it's a moment that I think Miyazaki himself likes to mythologize, because it's the moment where he beats this sort of all-powerful, this is before Harvey Weinstein is outed as genuinely one of the worst people ever to work in the film industry. Mm-hmm. This is, he's beaten this guy at his own job.
Yeah.
This, so it gets weirder. It gets weirder. So, Harvey Weinstein obviously goes, well, we got to release this with a dub in English, because there's no way anyone's going to read subtitles in 1998. And turns to Quentin Tarantino. And basically, along the lines of, Quentin, do you want to translate this Japanese cartoon into English? And Quentin Tarantino goes, no, but I might know a guy.
And who's the guy he knows?
It's Neil Gaiman, because everybody knows Neil Gaiman. I like Gaiman's script on this. It's fairly solid. I mean, I appreciate, obviously, particularly some of the concepts he sort of has to make work in English. Mononoke, for example, has no direct English translation. That's sort of a big one. But obviously he's got to sort of, particularly he's got to translate various idioms. He's got to sort of explain certain things around this film that just, to a standard normal English watching audience are going to go, what the hell is that?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the dub is fairly solid, and here we are. It's. I will say this: I do think the Princess Mononoke dub was sort of the start of the sort of, I suppose, the stunt casting in anime, particularly Studio Ghibli films, because we end up with obviously, House moving
the
cast.
Disney ones.
Yeah, House
and the
moving.
weird thing about it is, how they kind of take all these diverse actors who have done great work and kind of mash them into this Ghibli
thing
form. Like all of the women and the guys, especially the guy characters, sound kind of the similar. Like there's the street smart woman like Toki, who is played by Jada Pinkett Smith, and they kind of force her, although obviously her East Coast accent kind of comes out a little bit, but they kind of force all of these people to play the same character to a certain point. Yeah. Like, I don't know. They're... it's a little hard to explain.
Yeah, no, I would say, I definitely... It has a habit of being a little bit, like, you know... The only real outlier, I would say, is probably the Howl's Moving Castle dub, which, you know, has Christian Bale and Billy Crystal, and probably because it has two really quite well-known and sort of actually people who have done voice acting before, sort of works a little bit better. A lot of the time, though, it does feel a little bit flat, and sometimes, you know, it's more actually than, you know, you would normally hear in live action sort of, than more typical dubs of anime.
Yeah,
so
and obviously there are people who have came in and do some work, and then there are people who are just like, I'm doing the paycheck, I'm going to read this today. This was when I was actually working at Anime Insider, and I had to transcribe the interview. Oh, I can't remember who it was. She played the older version of the main character. I think it's not Suzanne Plachette. That was Spirited Away. But they did an interview with her, and she interacted with the younger version of herself. And obviously that's the stronger part of the dub, because they interacted with each other, and they got each other. And a lot of directors try to do this, and it's just like try to interact and like either try to use the talents or try to get like some kind of performance or make it their own. And you know, there are the people that have busy schedules and they can't do this, and there is a distinct difference between the two in a lot of the Disney Ghibli dubs. And
the nadir of which I would say is definitely Ponyo, where it's like, here is Miley Cyrus's brother, and here is one of the Whatamajigs, the flippin' singing band people. And here's Liam.
I know who you're talking about, and it's like the little Cyrus and the little God, it's like, this tells you how much things that are popular fall in and out that I can't remember them, but the Jonas Brothers, the youngest Jonas brother was in there, and
Cate Blanchett.
And they sang the song at the end, and God. I usually like to sit through all of the Ghibli credits because, you know, it's very well done art, and I like the music. But then I just fled the theater the moment I heard their voices.
And then you have Liam Neeson phoning it in as usual.
Liam Neeson.
Am
I on a moving vehicle and I need to stop terrorists? No.
No, I
don't know what to do then.
I did something with the goddess of the sea, and now I have a particular set of skills. But
I have a particular set of daughter.
She's a fish.
Yes.
But no, I mean, I would certainly put the Princess Mononoke dub in like the higher half. Like I still think this is gonna sound like the most left field one. I still think Porco Rosso is the gold standard of Ghibli dubs. There's just something about Michael Keaton as the main protagonist in Porco Rosso that I just think is the best piece of casting ever done in like voice acting, and I don't know why.
Well, nobody respected Michael Keaton as an actor until like recently. This was within a 10-year thing. Yeah. Like, and he is really damn good. He really goes out of it. It's just like the things he played were like comedy roles or doing Batman, where he, you know, wasn't an exact fit for Batman, but he tried to at least make it his own, and people respected it or they didn't. I mean, they're
Yeah.
like
Yeah, no, he does his
I think
best.
Michael Keaton went through the camp part of it and the serious part of it, and he could navigate them both. Like he could go through the serious parts of Batman Returns, and also the part where he like record scratches the "I'm gonna play this city like a heart from hell" or something, whatever
God.
that was.
Oh.
Like he's doing a DJ record scratch, so he could get away with both of that. So I think that. But yeah, definitely Michael Keaton is a underrespected actor, and he does bring a lot to that role.
Yeah.
The problem is I haven't seen that movie in about 15 years, so I can't give you as much of an opinion.
No.
I watched all of these movies back when Disney was releasing them, one at a time, and I haven't watched some of them since.
Yeah, that's fair. And but no, I mean, this will always be my favorite. This will always be my favorite Studio Ghibli film. Like,
obviously, it's the movie that brought you to the dance that is anime, and what a dance it is.
Oh my god! But yeah, I mean, and this is the thing. I don't know whether it was just the right film at the right time, or just because on top of everything, I was one of these kids that goes, "Oh, wolves are really cool," and this is sort of like, this is a perfect movie for like 14-year-old me, because it's like, hey, there's Japanese history and sort of this girl who's really cool, and there's this really cool music. I mean, I had the CD alongside all of the other CDs I had as a kid. I had the Princess Mononoke soundtrack because it was like, hey, this is a film I like.
Yeah. I feel like we didn't talk about the soundtrack very much, and we absolutely should have, because if there's one thing I'm going to say absolutely crushes is the soundtrack.
Oh, God,
It is the best thing Joe Hisaishi has ever done.
Yep.
And it is, like, I had the soundtrack when I was in college, and I had to, like, I don't know if I had to import it. I think they did it. Miramax did eventually a release, but I had to... It was not available at my local Hastings Entertainment Store. I had to special order the soundtrack from this new place called Amazon.com.
Not Amazon.com. But no, I mean, the soundtrack does really, really clever things, really quite clever things, because it's sort of half of it is this very sort of dramatic and, almost sort of Mahler-esque sort of, there's a lot of, Heisei, like Utamasu, like a lot of Japanese composers, do occasionally have this sort of magpie-esque thing where they sort of emulate more Western sounds. But then there's also like the song of the sort of the Iron Workers, which is this very traditional sound to the film, and obviously a lot of the percussive tracks are where they got this sort of ranked drum sort of sounds are very propulsive.
But it is extremely epic. It absolutely fits the movie to a T. It has wonderful themes. It is built on a lot of themes, and they replay them over, but they're specifically made for these scenes.
Yeah. The song is amazing. The Ashitaka and San song is amazing.
Yeah, Ashitaka and San is a wonderful ending theme to the entire experience. And I've actually used it in my wedding. And anybody who makes me have a prelude to their wedding, I will absolutely put Ashitaka and San in there. I don't care if they demand it or not. But I will play it, and they're like, "You are using this. Do this.
Do this." I mean, I am seeing this is me playing my own trumpet. I'm seeing Joe Heisei in Wembley in August, so that should be that should be amazing.
But, I mean, it is the most consistent one, too. Like, the entire soundtrack is absolutely amazing, and you can start it from beginning to end, and you can just listen to it as a CD. It is a great album that you can listen to.
Definitely.
I mean, there are some things where it's just like the Adagio of Life and Death, where it's just like, it is this very specific scene, and then they just... run it again, except slightly worse.
Yeah.
Although I should say, Adagio of Life and Death, great title for a song.
Yeah.
But its themes being played for different circumstances, it's the only thing I would ever use against it. But it is an absolutely amazing soundtrack, and you know, the best Joe Hisaishi has done. And one little bit of trivia: when they did the English version of the Ironworker song, one of the vocalists is Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who is the woman who did a lot of the Silent Hill songs, the vocals on that. So random trivia, like a lot of the celebrities did the major roles, but there were a lot of people in the voice acting industry that were in there. Like the English voice actor of Tenchi is an additional role. John DiMaggio, whose Shiny Metal Ash You Can Bite, is one of the supporting characters. John DeMata, who was big at the time. And you can just find little people like those. And Keith David, who had been... he is an actor. He is absolutely, you know, an actor who has done things. But he was a lot known then for doing a lot of voice acting. Like, he was in Gargoyles. So that was where I recognized his voice from.
I mean, Corey Burton is in here as well. Corey Burton is the main leper who delivers the line, oh, you know, life is suffering, it's hard, the world is cursed, etc. Who is basically a really big sort of, you know, voice actor behind the scenes for a lot of stuff. So he's, you know, he's in here.
It's... I wouldn't say it's just the celebrities. It's that it's also supported by a bevy of some of the best voice actors they had at the time.
I mean, this is sort of late 90s, so it is before, you know, a lot of the major sort of voice actors that we probably would talk about in normal episodes. But no, it's just... I fucking love this film.
I mean, if I am picking hair, you know, I'm losing phrases because I'm running out of energy. We should probably wrap this up soon, but I'm splitting hairs. That, you know, when comparing it to Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke is a great film. If it is Ghibli's defining film, that is fine. I think Spirited Away deserved its Oscar for Best Animated Film, and it being it both, if it was Princess Mononoke, absolutely it deserves it. Both are extremely great and deserving films, and I love them both, and I am not going to fight about that.
No. They are, this is the thing, Ghibli is such a high benchmark as a general thing that it's like... your favourite Studio Ghibli film is going to be your favourite Studio Ghibli film for reasons other than quality. It's going to be, you know, this film talks to you because, you know, it was the first Ghibli film you saw, or you like the way the characters are written, or, you know, you like this world. And Ghibli, I feel that, you know, these master craftsmen of sort of narratives, you know, speaks far more to the viewer in the heart than the head. You know, you can say, we could sit here for hours, we could get, you know, other people on, and we could really thrash this out and do our, you know, clickbaity definitive rating of what we would put all the Studio Ghibli films in. And somebody could come along and say, I disagree with you, and I would say, that's fine, that is what you are taking from these films. You know, Ghibli perhaps of all the animation studios in the world are the studio I go, there is no wrong answer to what is the best film.
And, you know, I can say, I mean, I wouldn't say that's a wrong answer, but then I can go, there are people who put Whisper of the Heart at the top, but I would put it at the bottom because I do not share Whisper of the Heart's feeling that middle school is this wistful place of discovery and, you know, romance. And I don't think essentially an eighth grader making a determinative declaration of love before he even knows what he likes or knows what he's doing with himself can make a declarative answer about love. And that's my thing. That's what there's somebody else who had a very different middle school
Yeah.
than I did. That it wasn't hell on wheels.
Yeah. Or is it just the John Denver, Joe? Is it just the John Denver you don't like?
Oh, John Denver's fine. I should note that because of Whisper of the Heart, we have the John Denver song, and then we have the metal band.
Oh God,
the Flying Machines.
Princess Imaginary Flying Machine, which is like the Imaginary Flying Machines, just as a sort of a random side, because we might eventually come around to talking about this.
Talk about their one big album and their second album where they didn't have any songs left, so they just had a crappy album. But Imaginary Flying Machines do metal covers of Miyazaki's, which means they do the big ones. There is a metal cover of the Japanese translation of John Denver's Country Roads.
And what more could you want in this world?
Yeah, and that of our crazy, strange world. Anyway, we are starting to get to the length of the actual movie, and I can't listen to myself for that long, so we should probably wrap it up.
So yeah, just see this, like any Ghibli film, just see it, because it's like. Because sometimes, you are a 14-year-old who has a very, emerging sense of taste, and you see a film and it changes your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Joe, what are we talking about?
Speaking of things that you saw that changed your life, we are going to talk about my favorite anime of all time.
Oh, fuck.
The one where I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this anime. I mean, I would probably be here, but I would not be here to the extent that I am. I probably would have met you. I probably wouldn't be talking here. And I probably would not be as... I don't want to put... I wouldn't be the person I am without this one. We are going to be talking about Haibane Renmei.
Right.
So...
And so the usual social media. If you like this video, like and subscribe and do all the other funky things that get us to beat the algorithm, because the algorithm is evil. We can be found on Twitter at not so final prod. Which will obviously be linked down below, and we can also be found on Patreon if you want to commission an episode or just want to financially support us because one of us has moved and could really do with the money. We can be found on patreon.com/The Thom and Joe Show. Tom is spelt with a H because I'm special. Until next time, I've been Tom.
I'm Joe. And one last thing, I'm sorry about the loud noises at 1:50 in. My mic slipped its bounds and then just crashed, and I was trying to fix it without noticing and just made it worse.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, see you later.
See